First report of observational contact with species 7328, humans. Submitted by High Observer Nathlete of the Consortium Scientific Armada. The probe registered the approaching vessel at exactly 3.8 temporal units before visual confirmation. A crude cylinder of metal alloys and composite materials, its propulsion systems leaking radiation like a punctured fluid sac. The human's interstellar technology was primitive but functional. Another species taking its first awkward steps into the vast ecosystem of the galaxy. I remember thinking how fortunate we were to witness another emergence. After the catastrophe of the Veil Nebula, after what happened to the Rixcon studies team, the consortium had grown cautious about first contact protocols. But this was different. We were invisible, untouchable behind our phase-shifted observation membranes. They could not detect us, could not know we were studying them. How wrong we were! Report, Advanced Commander Vrel demanded, his primary speaking sac inflating with the appropriate formal harmonics. I gestured at the holographic display with my sensory appendages. Standard patrol vessel, human designation UNSC Vigilant, crew of 46, minimal armaments. Their long-range sensors are rudimentary. They perceive us as empty space. And your analysis of their capability? The commander's upper eyes narrowed, while his lower set remained fixed on the tactical display. Negligible threat. Their weapons are kinetic and nuclear, effective at proximity, but useless against our displacement fields. Their most advanced propulsion achieves perhaps 1/40th of our standard cruising velocity. Vrel's membrane rippled with satisfaction. Good. The Council requires comprehensive biometric data. Prepare the scanning protocol. Non-invasive measures only. I hesitated. Sir, the consortium directive suggests... The directives suggest caution. I am exercising appropriate caution. They will never know we were here. His tone shifted to formal command structure, ending all debate. Execute the protocol, observer. I obeyed. The scanning field enveloped the human vessel like an invisible tide, penetrating its hull as though it were porous fabric. Data streamed into our collection arrays. Atmospheric composition, biological patterns, genetic structures, neural architecture, all standard metrics for species assessment. What happened next defied all predictive models. Alarm signals erupted across the command interface. The human vessel's energy signature spiked dramatically. Their primitive sensors had somehow detected our scanning field. Impossible. They've raised shields, my assistant Threll reported, voice vibrating with confusion. And they're hailing us. Commander Vrel's posture shifted to alert stance. How? They shouldn't be able to perceive our presence. A human voice crackled through our communication system. Unidentified vessel, you are conducting unauthorized scans of a United Earth Coalition patrol ship. This constitutes a hostile action under Interstellar Protocol 17. Disengage immediately and identify yourself. The commander's membrane paled. Return to observation state. Disengage all active systems. Too late. The human vessel fired what appeared to be simple guidance rockets, but the projectiles vanished from our sensors before impact. Then, impossibly, they reappeared inside our displacement field. Boarding devices, Threll whispered. They've somehow bypassed our dimensional barriers. The human soldiers emerged from their boarding pods wearing heavy armored suits that our scans couldn't penetrate. Their movements were precise, coordinated with a hive-like efficiency we'd only observed in insectoid species. Contact security teams, Vrel ordered. Contain but do not harm. We need to understand how they detected us. I interfaced with the ship's systems, watching through internal sensors as our security personnel confronted the humans. The humans carried primitive projectile weapons, metal-propelling metal, barbaric but somehow elegant in its simplicity. Our first security team deployed neural disruptors, standard non-lethal containment technology. The humans should have collapsed instantly. Instead, they continued advancing, their vital signs showing only minor disruption. One human removed his helmet, revealing a face with too many teeth and eyes that reflected nothing. Your technology is impressive, the human said, addressing the security team leader directly. But our neural architecture isn't compatible with your disruption field. A happy evolutionary accident. Commander Vrel watched the feed with all four eyes widened. Impossible. They've prepared for this? How could they know? The human leader, his uniform identified him as Commander Jackson, continued speaking as his team systematically disabled our security personnel. We've been waiting for one of you to get curious enough to make a mistake, he said, seemingly aware that his words were being monitored. The others are more cautious. The Arcturus incident taught them to observe from further distances. But your kind, you always need to touch, to investigate, to understand. I felt my circulatory system constrict. Commander, they knew we were coming. This is a trap. Rel's membrane darkened with rage. Deploy lethal countermeasures. Now. But before the order could be executed, the humans did something unexpected. They synchronized their communication devices and broadcast a signal, a simple pattern of pulses that somehow interfaced with our ship's consciousness core. Our vessel's sentient systems began shutting down, infected by what we would later learn was a primitive form of information warfare, a virus, somehow perfectly evolved to corrupt our quantum consciousness networks. All security teams, protect the consciousness core. Rel commanded, but the humans had already secured our central chamber. Commander Jackson's voice broadcasted throughout the ship. Your vessel will be studied. Your technology will be analyzed. Your data will expand our understanding. This is the third such examination of advanced species vessels. Each teaches us more. Vrel turned to me, his membrane now pale with horror. Observer, transmit emergency protocols to the fleet, complete data package on everything we've learned. I began the transmission, encoding our discoveries about the humans' unexpected capabilities, when Jackson's voice interrupted again. We've already accounted for your transmission. The signal is being intercepted. However, we have allowed one automated distress beacon to activate. Your response fleet will arrive shortly. Why would you allow? Rel began. Jackson removed something from his utility harness, a simple mechanical device with a blinking light, because they need to witness what happens next. They need to understand the price of curiosity. The light stopped blinking. Commander, my assistant Threll whispered, I'm detecting multiple human vessels emerging from faster-than-light travel. Far more advanced than this patrol ship. They've surrounded us. The holographic display confirmed it, 17 vessels of varying configurations, all bearing the same insignia as Commander Jackson's uniform. Their weapon systems were active. You misunderstand, Jackson said, watching our reactions with those strange flat eyes. This vessel, he gestured around him at our ship, is not our technology. It's bait. We've been setting these traps for decades, waiting for species like yours to spring them. Commander Vrel's membrane rippled with dawning comprehension. You're saying this patrol ship is one we captured from the Mizari Collective 8 years ago? Jackson finished. Retrofitted with our modifications, the perfect lure for scientific mind. On the tactical display, I watched as the human fleet took up attack positions. Their weapons technology was nothing like the primitive systems on the patrol vessel. These were advanced gravitic cannons, zero-point energy projectors, weapons that shouldn't exist in a species at their developmental stage. How? I asked, professional curiosity overriding my fear. Your species only achieved spaceflight 60 years ago. These technologies should be centuries beyond your capability. Jackson's mouth formed what I recognized as a smile, but it contained none of the empathic markers our xenobiologists associated with human expressions of happiness. Because, he said quietly, we didn't develop them. We took them, just as we're taking yours now. The last transmission from our ship was automatic, triggered by catastrophic system failure, as the human fleet opened fire. Within 3 minutes of their arrival, our vessel was reduced to component particles. There were no survivors. Except, of course, for the data package that Commander Jackson allowed to reach the Consortium Council. The package containing this report, along with one final recording, the human commander standing amid the wreckage of our bridge, looking directly into the emergency recording device. Consider this a message to all watching species, he said. We know you're out there, we know you're watching, and we want you to understand something fundamental about humanity. We learned long ago that sometimes victory means being willing to die on your feet. Sometimes, the one who walks away from the battle isn't the winner. It's the one who ensures their enemy never walks away at all. The recording ends there. But our deep space monitoring arrays have detected unusual signal patterns from 17 previously unmapped sectors. We believe these may be human vessels, using technologies gathered from a dozen different species. And they're moving outward. Toward us. End of first report. High Counselor's Addendum. The expedition to Restricted Zone 7C will proceed despite these findings. The humans must be contained before they acquire additional technological asset. However, I must note my personal observation. In our long history of interstellar contact, we have encountered predator species, hive minds, and even stellar manipulators. But never before have we discovered a species that advanced not through innovation but through systematic technological appropriation. A species that progresses by deliberately sacrificing its own to capture the advances of others. The greatest threat may not be what humanity is, but what they are becoming with each new species they encounter. Classified Record, Strategic Operations Command, Operation Lighthouse. Year 7 Commander Thomas Jackson's personal log. The face of the alien observer Nathlith, according to the intelligence recovered from their quantum processing cores, haunts me. 4 iridescent eyes arranged in vertical pairs, all widening in that moment of perfect comprehension. They understood too late what they had stumbled into, what we had become. I'm dictating this from the secure chamber aboard the UEC Harbinger, 15 hours after the destruction of what the aliens called their research vessel. Around me, technicians dismantle the salvage technology from the consortium ship. Every circuit, every component, every fragment of their computational substrate will be cataloged, analyzed, and integrated. Admiral Garrett enters without knocking one of the privileges of being the architect of humanity's most controversial defense doctrine. Congratulations, Tom, he says. Examining the displays of dissected alien technology, another successful extraction. I don't look up from the neurological interface we recovered, an elegant device that allows direct mind-to-ship communication. If by successful you mean we vaporized another scientific vessel and murdered its crew, then yes, very successful. The Admiral's expression hardens. We've had this conversation. They weren't scientists, they were intelligence gatherers. The difference between their scientific instruments and military reconnaissance is purely semantic. They were still sentient beings. So were the colonists on Europa and Proxima Latesan. His voice is cold with the memory of those early massacres. So were the 30 million who died when the Mizari decided humanity was expanding too quickly and needed to be contained. I have no response. He's right, of course. We all remember the footage from the orbital bombardment of New Seattle, the methodical, almost surgical destruction of our outposts. The message was clear. Stay within your boundaries, or be exterminated. Have you reviewed what we recovered? Garrett asks, changing the subject. I nod, gesturing to the display. The consortium is composed of 17 species, with the Tracula as the dominant member. They've been observing us since our first lunar colony. They cataloged the Mizari attack and our response. And they're terrified, not just of us. Something has the entire consortium on high alert. They've been systematically studying and categorizing every spacefaring species in this sector. Garrett's interest sharpens. Looking for allies? Or threats? Their databases contain references to something they call the drift. It appears with increasing frequency in their recent communications. Another enemy? I hesitate. Unknown. But consider this. The consortium has technology centuries beyond the Mizari. Yet they hide. They observe. They catalog. They've been monitoring 17 different species without direct contact. The Admiral absorbs this. Forward everything to analysis. I want to know what they're afraid of. He turns to leave, then pauses. The council meeting is in 3 hours. The diplomatic corps is pushing for contact. They always do. Yes, but this time they have support from the colonial administration. The argument is that we've made our point, that perhaps the Lighthouse Protocol has served its purpose. I feel a familiar anger rising. And what happens when we extend a hand and they remove our arm? Garrett's expression softens slightly. You lost family on Proxima. We all lost someone, Admiral. That's not the point. The point is, there are predators out there who see our existence as either a threat or an opportunity. We can't afford to be naive. No. But neither can we afford to become the very monsters we fear. He nods toward the door. 3 hours, Commander. Make your case. The council chamber is a perfect circle, deliberately reminiscent of ancient human gathering places. 17 representatives, one for each major Earth nation, and colony, arranged around a central holographic display currently showing the remains of the consortium vessel. Foreign Secretary Winters speaks first. Commander Jackson, the Council has reviewed your after-action report. While the operation achieved its intelligence objectives, many of us are concerned about the escalation path we're on. With respect, Madam Secretary, we're responding to escalation, not initiating it. The consortium vessel entered restricted space and conducted invasive scans of what they believed was a human patrol ship. A patrol ship we deliberately placed as bait? Representative Thomason counters. The Mars Colonial Administrator has never supported the Lighthouse Protocol. We're provoking these encounters. We're revealing intentions? I correct. The consortium has been studying us for decades. They know about the Mazzari attack. They know how we responded. Yet they still chose to interfere with what they thought was a military vessel. What does that tell you about their ultimate intentions? Admiral Garrett stands. What Commander Jackson is too diplomatic to say is that the Lighthouse Protocol has confirmed our working hypothesis. We are surrounded by technologically superior species who view us as either a potential threat or potential prey. None have approached openly. None have offered alliance. All have chosen surveillance over contact. The holographic display shifts to show the captured data on 17 cataloged species. The Mazzari were just the first to move from observation to action. I continue. And we all remember how that ended. No one speaks. They remember. After the bombardment of our colonies, after millions of deaths, humanity's response had shocked the galaxy. We sacrificed the Mars Defense Fleet, our entire military space presence, in a suicidal assault on the Mazzari homeworld, not to win, but to deploy something far worse, engineered bioweapons that targeted the Mazzari-specific genetic structure. Within weeks, their civilization collapsed. Within months, their species was functionally extinct. It was genocide. It was also the last time any alien species directly attacked human settlements. The recovered data suggests the consortium fears something, I say into the silence. Something called a drift. Analysis believes it may be another spacefaring power, one that even the consortium fears. Secretary Winters leans forward. Are you suggesting a potential ally? I'm suggesting a potential greater threat. One that might necessitate reconsideration of our isolation policy. The discussion erupts into competing voices. The debate that has divided humanity since the Mazzari War. Engage or withdraw. Reach out or fortify. Trust or prepare. In the midst of this, my neural implant pulses with an emergency notification. I excuse myself and step into the adjacent communication hub. The face that appears on the screen isn't human. Commander Jackson, the alien says, those 4 vertical eyes now fixed on mine. I am Observer Nathleaf. Impossible. I watched this being die when we destroyed the consortium vessel. You seem surprised, the alien continues. Understandable. The being you encountered was my, you might say, clone, though that's imprecise. We distribute our consciousness across multiple physical instantiations. My training takes over. How did you access this communication channel? Using technology you provided. Unwittingly, the quantum entanglement modules you salvaged from our vessel remain linked to our network. You've been uploading our technology directly into your systems. I feel a cold dread. You've breached our security. No, I've initiated contact. There's a difference, as your species should understand. The alien's membrane ripples in what I've come to recognize as their equivalent of ironic amusement. We've been monitoring your council meeting, an interesting debate about whether to continue treating all non-human intelligence as hostile. You've given us little reason to think otherwise, as you've given us. Yet here I am communicating rather than attacking. Consider why. I study the alien face. So alien yet now strangely familiar after hours of reviewing their biology. The drift. You need our help. Not help. Alliance. The drift is not a species, Commander. It's a phenomenon. A wave of space-time distortion moving through the galaxy, consuming everything in its path. It has already devoured 3 civilizations on the galaxy's outer rim. Why should I believe you? Because in approximately 72 of your hours, the leading edge of the drift will reach your colony on Titan. Shortly after, it will envelop Earth itself. Unless we act together, I stare at the alien, searching for deception. If this threat is real, why monitor us? Why not approach openly? The same reason you hide behind your Lighthouse Protocol? Fear? The alien's voice modulates slightly. The consortium observed your response to the Mazzari. You didn't simply defeat them. You eradicated them with methodical precision. You proved yourselves capable of species-wide genocide when threatened. What message did you expect that to send to the galaxy? The truth of this strikes harder than I expected. that we shouldn't be attacked, that you shouldn't be allowed to spread, that perhaps the Mizari weren't wrong to try to contain you, only unsuccessful. The alien leans closer to whatever imaging device it's using. But now circumstances have changed. The drift threatens us all, and humanity possesses something the consortium needs. Technology, perspective, the willingness to sacrifice, to take unthinkable action when survival demands it. The alien's membrane darkens. The same quality that makes your species terrifying may be what saves this galaxy. A notification appears. The council summons me back. You have proof of this drift? I ask quickly. It's already in your systems, embedded in the data you stole from us. Examine it. Then I will contact you again with coordinates for a meeting. A meeting? Yes. Between you and me, one commander to another, before our respective governments can interfere. The alien's eyes narrow, because the solution to the drift will not be one that either of our civilizations would officially sanction. The communication ends. I return to the council chamber, my mind racing. If the alien is telling the truth, then everything changes. If it's a deception, Secretary Winters notices my expression. Commander, you have something to add to the discussion? I look around the chamber at the representatives of a humanity that has lived in fear and isolation since the Mizari War. At leaders who have authorized acts of preemptive violence in the name of security. At the architects of the doctrine that has defined my career. Never again will we be victims. Yes, Madam Secretary. I believe we need to immediately review the data recovered from the consortium vessel, specifically all references to something called the drift. And why is that, Commander? I meet her gaze steadily. Because I believe we may have been preparing for the wrong enemy all along, and the real one arrives in 3 days. Around the table, 17 faces show varying degrees of disbelief. But as the recovered data appears on their screens, the projected path of the space-time anomaly, the destruction left in its wake, the countdown to Earth's exposure, their expressions shift to something I haven't seen in our leadership for a very long time. Fear. Real existential fear. And somewhere, watching through our own systems, Observer Nathalith waits for my decision, to meet, to listen, to consider the unthinkable. The greatest threat to both our species may not be each other after all, but what we might become when faced with extinction. What lines we might cross together. Joint Operational Record. Final Defense Initiative Commander Thomas Jackson Observer Nathalith Emergency Broadcast. The meeting point was a derelict mining station, orbiting a nameless dwarf planet in neutral space, as neutral as anything could be in a galaxy carved into territories by suspicious species. I arrived alone in a shuttle, as agreed. No weapons beyond a standard sidearm. No surveillance beyond the emergency beacon that would alert the fleet if I died. Observer Nathalith was already there, this version of the alien taller than the one I'd encountered on the consortium vessel. The 4 eyes tracked my movement as I entered the abandoned control room. You came alone, the alien noted, membrane rippling with what I'd learned to interpret as surprise. As did you. Either we're both fools or we both understand what's at stake. Nathalith gestured to the observation window. Outside, the stars shimmered with an unnatural ripple like heat distortion above a burning world. The leading edge of the drift, the alien said quietly. It will reach this system in 17 hours. Your colony on Titan in 23. Earth itself in 36. I studied the phenomenon, so innocuous from this distance. You said it consumed 3 civilizations. How? Not just their bodies or their worlds. It consumes everything. Matter, energy, information, even space-time itself. It leaves nothing. Not destruction, not debris. Simply absent. And the consortium has been monitoring it for decades. At first, we believed it was a natural phenomenon, perhaps a side effect of dark energy expansion. Then we discovered the fragments. Nathalith activated a small projector. It displayed twisted shapes of impossible geometry. Artifacts recovered from the very edge of the anomaly. These are not natural formations. They're engineered. The drift is a weapon, Commander. Or perhaps more accurately, the side effect of one. Something ancient awoke and began feeding. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's failing environmental systems. You're telling me this is a deliberate attack? By whom? We don't know. The technology is beyond even the most advanced consortium understanding. The artifacts contain information sequences that defy our mathematical models. But they're clearly designed. And you think humanity can help stop this? How exactly? The alien's membrane darkened. Because your species has demonstrated a willingness to implement final solutions, to commit extinction-level acts when threatened. The consortium has debated for years while the drift expanded. We have the technological capability to attempt a defense, but lack the resolve. You want us to do your dirty work. I want us to survive, Commander. All of us. Even your murderous, paranoid species. I allowed myself a grim smile. Says the representative of 17 advanced civilizations that chose to hide and observe rather than warn us about the threat. Our mistake. One of many. Nathalith moved closer. The Consortium Council has authorized me to share our complete database on the drift, along with access to our displacement technology, the ability to phase matter between dimensional states. We believe it may be the key to disrupting the drift's consumption process. And in exchange, you convince your people to fight alongside us, not just with weapons, but with that unique human perspective, the willingness to make any sacrifice necessary for survival. I studied the alien carefully. There's something you're not telling me. All 4 eyes blinked simultaneously. A tell I'd learned indicated discomfort. The defensive measure we've theorized, it would require the sacrifice of an inhabited system, a star, its planets, all life within it, converted into a dimensional inversion wave. You're talking about deliberately killing billions to save trillions. Yes. The alien's voice remained steady. The Consortium Council could never approve such an action directly, but they might allow it to happen if proposed and executed by others. I understood then. We weren't being asked as allies. We were being recruited as fall guys. The species willing to commit genocide, now being pointed at a greater threat. I'll bring your proposal to our council, I said, keeping my expression neutral. But I'll need proof. Irrefutable evidence of this threat, and that your solution might work. Of course. Nathalith extended a data module. Everything we have. As I took it, the station shuddered violently. Emergency lights flashed. That's not possible, the alien whispered, membrane paling dramatically. It can't be here already. The observation window shattered as reality itself seemed to tear open. I woke aboard a consortium vessel, medical apparatus attached to my broken body. Observer Nathalith stood nearby, conferring with what appeared to be a consortium military commander, accelerating faster than projected. The military officer was saying, Titan's already gone. Earth has perhaps 18 hours. Nathalith noticed my consciousness. Commander Jackson, you've been unconscious for 6 hours. The drift, it's evolving, accelerating. I tried to sit up, wincing at the pain. What happened at the station? A localized incursion. The first we've ever witnessed. The drift doesn't just consume, Commander. It probes, tests defenses. It destroyed the station but left us alive. I don't know why. The consortium commander approached. Your Earth Council has reviewed our data. They're deploying your fleet to the coordinates we provided, alongside our forces. Whether they'll agree to the dimensional inversion proposal remains unclear. They won't, I said, with certainty. Not after Proxima. We've seen what genocide does to its victims and its perpetrators. I removed the medical devices despite protests. We need another solution. Nathalith's membrane rippled with frustration. There is no other solution. The math is clear. The drift must be countered with a dimensional inversion of sufficient magnitude. Only a star system has enough energy. I met the alien's 4 eyes directly. Then we use an uninhabited system. None are positioned correctly. The inversion must be generated at precisely the right coordinates to disrupt the drift's advance. Then we move one. I looked between their bewildered faces. You have displacement technology. We have gravitational manipulation systems developed from Mizari tech. Together, we should be able to relocate a star. The consortium commander made a sound that needed no translation, pure disbelief. Even if theoretically possible, the energy requirement would be massive, I finished. So we use the drift itself. It's consuming energy, right? We position ourselves along its edge, draw power from its process, and use that to fuel our displacement field. Nathalith's membrane shifted rapidly through colors. That's insane. We would have to operate within the consumption boundary. Nothing survives inside the drift. You said it yourself. It left us alive at the station. It's studying us. Which means it's not just a natural phenomenon or a mindless weapon. There's intelligence directing it. I forced myself to stand. And anything intelligent can be fought. 12 hours later, the combined fleet of humanity and the consortium enemies just days before took up position around an uninhabited brown dwarf star. 17 consortium vessels using their displacement technology to create a dimensional pocket, nested inside the protection of Earth's gravitational distortion fields. The plan was simple in concept, nearly impossible in execution. Capture the brown dwarf in a displacement field, move it into the path of the drift, then trigger a dimensional inversion using the star's mass. The resulting shockwave should theoretically disrupt the drift's consumption pattern long enough for a more permanent solution to be developed. I stood on the bridge of the UEC Harbinger alongside observer Nathleaf, watching as the edge of the drift approached, a wall of shimmering unreality consuming everything in its path. Energy readings are off the scale, reported my science officer. The displacement field is holding, but just barely. Activate gravitational tethers, I ordered. Begin drawing power from the drift's boundary layer. The ship shuddered as impossible energies flowed through systems never designed for such power. On screen, the brown dwarf began to shift, moving fractionally along the plotted course. It's working, Nathalith whispered. Then everything went wrong. The drift changed. What had been a uniform wall of distortion suddenly developed structures, vast impossible geometries emerging from within. Incoming transmission, the communications officer shouted, sounding panicked. It's coming from inside the drift. The view screen filled with an image that made no sense to human or alien eyes. Angles that couldn't exist. Colors outside any spectrum we could naturally perceive. A voice spoke, simultaneously in perfect English and the consortium's harmonic language. Your resistance is understood. Your potential is confirmed. Nathleith grasped my arm, membrane nearly white with shock. It's communicating. Who are you? I demanded. What do you want? We are the architects. We harvest potential. The image shifted, showing planets, stars, entire galaxies being consumed. All that exists is raw material. Species that resist demonstrate evolutionary value. You will be preserved. The brown dwarf suddenly collapsed in on itself, not as a natural star would, but as if folded by impossible mathematics into a singularity of information. Preservation requires reconstruction. Your current forms are inadequate. The drift surged forward, engulfing the nearest consortium vessel. But instead of disappearing, it transformed. The ship's matter reconfigured into something else. Part machine, part biological, entirely alien. It's not destroying, I realized with horror. It's converting, harvesting. Nathalith's voice shook. The civilizations it consumed, they're not gone. They've been repurposed. As what? I believe, the alien said slowly, as components of itself. The transformed consortium ship fired on us not with any weapon we recognized, but with a beam that began rewriting the molecular structure of our hull on contact. All vessels, evasive action, I ordered. Concentrate fire on the transformed ship. As our fleet scattered, I turned to Nathalith. Our plan won't work. We can't fight this directly. Then what do we do? I studied the tactical display, watching as more ships were caught and transformed. An idea formed, terrible, desperate, but possibly our only chance. The dimensional inversion. We can still trigger it, but not to destroy the drift, to contain it. I pointed to the transformed vessels. They're still partially composed of normal matter. If we create an inversion field and collapse it around them, we could isolate a section of the drift in a pocket dimension, Nathalie finished. But the energy required, we use the Harbinger. Overload our reactor at the center of the displacement field you create. The aliens stared at me. That would destroy this vessel. Everyone aboard. Yes. I met those 4 eyes steadily. You wanted humanity's perspective, our willingness to sacrifice? Here it is. After a moment of silence, Nathalie's membrane darkened with determination. I will remain as well. My consciousness instiations must witness this, must carry this knowledge forward. I gave orders for the evacuation of non-essential personnel, then addressed the combined fleet. All vessels, we have one opportunity. The consortium ships will create a displacement field around the transformed vessels. When I give the signal, all ships must jump to light speed simultaneously. The resulting space-time fracture, combined with our reactor overload, should seal the drift fragment in a pocket dimension. Admiral Garrett's voice came through. The rest of the drift will still be out there, Tom. Yes. But we'll have captured a piece of it. Something we can study. And we'll have demonstrated that we can fight back. As the evacuation proceeded, Nathalith approached me at the viewport. Together we watched the drift continuing its inexorable advance. The transformed ships now moving with terrible purpose. You knew, didn't you? I asked, quietly. The consortium. You knew this wasn't just consumption. That's why you were cataloging species, looking for those who might have value to the architects. We suspected, the alien admitted. But we did not know for certain until now. I nodded toward the drift. They said species that resist demonstrate evolutionary value, that will be preserved as components, parts of their greater whole. Nathalith's membrane rippled. Is that survival, Commander? To exist as cells in some cosmic entity, stripped of autonomy? No, it's extinction by another name. The evacuation complete. We initiated the final sequence. The consortium vessels moved into position, their displacement technology creating a bubble of altered reality around the transformed ships. Now, I ordered. As the Allied fleet jumped away, tearing the fabric of space-time at their departure points, I triggered the reactor overload. The Harbinger shuddered as energies no ship was meant to contain coursed through its systems. Beside me, Nathalith spoke in the harmonic language of the consortium. A prayer, perhaps, or a final message to future installations. The view screen showed the drift fragment thrashing against the displacement field, the transformed ships pounding against the dimensional barrier as they realized our intent. Your resistance is anticipated, came the voice of the architects. Your strategy is known. Then you know we won't be harvested without a fight, I responded. And that humans in the consortium have something you clearly value. Yes. Defiance. Sacrifice. These qualities will be preserved when your physical forms are not. The reactor reached critical. Alarms blared. The displacement field began to collapse inward, compressing the drift fragment. You're wrong, I said, as the end approached. What we're demonstrating isn't just defiance or sacrifice, it's choice. The right to determine our own fate. That's what makes us who we are. This distinction is noted. It will be studied. As the reactor detonated and the displacement field collapsed into a singularity, I felt Nathalith's alien hand grasp mine. A final gesture of alliance between species that had feared each other for too long. The last thing I saw was the drift fragment being compressed, folded in on itself, sealed away into a pocket dimension. Not destroyed, but contained. Imprisoned. And as consciousness faded, I heard the architect's final message, not through technology, but somehow directly in my mind. Your containment strategy is flawed. We exist in dimensions beyond your comprehension. What you have sealed away is merely an extension. The whole remains. Nonetheless, you have demonstrated unexpected potential. The harvesting timeline will be adjusted. You will be given time to evolve further. When we return, your combined species will have matured into something worthy of true preservation. From the personal journal of Admiral Elizabeth Garrett, 30 days after the containment event, the Alliance holds, for now, 17 consortium species and humanity, bound together by shared trauma and imminent threat. The captured drift fragment remains secure in its dimensional prison, though our scientists report strange energy readings from the containment field. Thomas Jackson is honored as a hero by two civilizations that were enemies mere months ago. Observer Nathalith's other instantiations have become our most vocal advocates within the Consortium Council. But the final transmission from the Harbinger troubles me deeply. The architects aren't defeated. They've merely postponed their harvest, given us time to evolve further. To what end? What kind of cosmic evolutionary pressure are they exerting? What are they shaping us to become? More disturbing still are the preliminary findings from our study of the contained fragment. The mathematical patterns within it match ancient symbols discovered on Earth and 17 other worlds, carvings dating back tens of thousands of years. As if the architects have visited before, have been guiding our development all along. We thought the greatest threat was extinction. Now I fear something far worse, that our entire existence, our conflicts, our advancements, even our willingness to die on our feet, has been carefully cultivated, that we are crops being tended for eventual harvest. The combined fleet patrols the containment zone day and night. We tell ourselves we're guarding against escape. But increasingly, I wonder if we're actually standing watch over something else entirely. A window into what we, ourselves, are destined to become.